So, I'm a huge fan of Survivor. I've seen every season at least once, and my fiance and I fall asleep to it just about every night. I've also been getting into doing review content on YouTube, and frankly, I need a bit of a break from stand-up comics, though I am working on a few reviews of specials that just came out, so like and subscribe and all that so you don't miss it. Anyway, you can imagine my delight when, after watching a Chris James video, I got the idea to search for reality TV shows I could review and found this little gem.
But the first season of Survivor remains its most controversial.
I don't blame producers for influencing. What else could they do?
There's coercion. You're putting your thumb on the scale.
This is not about money. Mark Burnett manipulated my exit from the show.
The tribe has spoken.
It also created the world's first reality TV villain, who played the game a little too hard.
Richard's a snake.
I've been dealing with the consequences for 24 years since, and spent years and years in prison as a result of it.
Wait, what? This is gonna be juicy. Let's dive right the fuck in. First, they talk about Survivor's predecessor, something called Eco Wars.
In every sense of the word.
The world's greatest adventure competition, the Eco Challenge.
Eco Challenge was like triathlons on steroids. And you go 24 hours. Each race is like around 250 to 350 miles.
And it goes on and on and on. But we're in it.
And they're brutal. You know, people are super hardcore that do this.
First broadcast on MTV in 1995, Eco Challenge is the brainchild of the man who would help define reality as a new TV genre, Mark Burnett.
Mark Burnett. Give praise to this notorious legend, for without him, 'twould be no Survivor. If Jeff Probst is the beautiful face of the show, then Mark Burnett is the iron skull behind it. Which is to say, if Jeff is my Survivor daddy, Mark's the Survivor mommy. I'm not sorry for what I just said, but I did hate it.
The country by storm.
That paved the way for its creator to become an industry titan.
The only reason this show was successful is because of Mark Burnett. Yeah, Mark's the biggest winner.
Mark Burnett.
3 years of my life have gone into bringing adventure racing to this country. I just feel absolutely over the moon that we're finally here.
Mark Burnett is a fascinating character. Basically, he was not in TV, not in entertainment, and decided, I'm gonna make my own show and my own adventure race and figure out how to do it.
It turns out, Mark had a way harder time getting a network to sign Survivor than ever I'd have thought. Given that it's now a juggernaut of reality TV, I was shocked to find that out. Hell, even CBS, their home network, gave them a no initially. This show goes on to explain the details, and if you're curious, check out Dark Side of Reality, Episode 7, and it's right here on YouTube. But I'm here for the tea, so let's get to spilling.
And got a yes. No doesn't actually mean no.
I assure you, that's in context and not foreshadowing part of the dark side of Mark Burnett. I'm pretty sure. Anyway, Mark went to a bunch of sponsors like Reebok and Visa and got them on board to back the show, then went back to CBS and got that yes, which actually meant yes. Then it was time to find their cast.
It's still a gamble, but with advertisers already on board, CBS gives Burnett the green light. Now all he needs is a cast.
You're simply looking for A-type people who are diverse economically, racially, age, geographically,
Smile,
intent, belief.
My mom comes home from work and she throws this piece of paper at me and it says 16 people, $1 million, 39 days, survive. The money.
And diverse they indeed were. I'll share a few of their introductions, but they all share a little backstory as to how they got on the cast, which is pretty interesting. But for the sake of my aging tech, I gotta cut out most of this part.
This might be my way to get into acting. My name is Jervis Peterson, and I was a castaway on season 1 of Survivor.
In 1999, I was 27 years old. I show up at the CBS studio, and the very first person that I run into in the lobby is this PA. And he says, hey, listen, they want you to be the guy that's gonna hit on all the girls. And that's all I had to hear. Because if you tell me what you're buying, that's what I'm selling. My name is Joel Klug, and I was on the first season of Survivor.
But before they could be part of the show, they underwent a pretty gnarly selection process.
The $1 million cash prize draws thousands of applicants. To narrow the field, Mark Burnett has those with potential undergo perhaps the most rigorous selection process ever devised.
It was 10 days of psychological tests, physicals, and interviews. That was pretty intense. You're sequestered the whole time. You're at the hotel, so you can't speak to anybody.
They'd come bursting in your room at 2 a.m, lights, camera, hey, wake up, what are you doing, and then like sit you down and ask you all these questions, and that would happen rather frequently.
You're an idiot if you think you can predict behavior that you see in a casting air-conditioned room in Los Angeles to what may happen in a jungle. And how do they know what it's going to be like to suffer in like 100-degree heat, 100-degree humidity? They don't know. How would they?
Okay, so we're starting to see some of the dark side here. That's brutal. But 16 people made it through and were chosen to head on down old Borneo way.
It's real now.
It takes more than 2 days for the cast to fly to the island of Borneo in the South China Sea.
Hey, we've landed.
Looks like
Then there's a 65-mile drive to a remote pier where they board a boat for the final leg of their journey.
They stop the boat a few miles off of this island in the South China Sea, and Mark comes out and he says, that's your new home. You guys are gonna have to get yourselves there. I'm like, holy shit, are they gonna throw us off this boat?
The quick answer was yes.
I'm like, holy shit, are they gonna throw us off this boat?
Are we gonna do these?
Where's our box? You are witnessing 16 Americans begin an adventure that will forever change their lives.
That's the voice of a very young Jeff Probst, who was chosen, aside from his charm, for his ability to get things in a single take.
No creature comfort.
The primary reason why he was cast was he was the one-take wonder. They were really concerned with somebody to step up, deliver the line, and go.
16 strangers forced to band together, carve out a new existence, totally accountable for their actions. They must learn to adapt or they're voted off. In the end, only one will remain and will leave the island with $1 million in cash as their reward.
I remember watching this for the first time when I was 10 years old. It was a whole family sit-down type of occasion in my house, and that's probably the reason I'm veritably obsessed with it now. But enough about me. Let's get into the juice we were all promised.
As the original group of 16 starts to shrink, conditions for those who remain get more challenging by the day.
I'm hungry. I think we're all pretty hungry. I've gone days when I've only had some fruit, but there's no prospect of having any food here. It's dire. You what?
Bait hanging and nothing moving. Empty. These do suck.
Each tribe, season 1, was provided a can of rice that they had to ration, and that was it.
What you cooking, Rude? I'm gonna make the rice and a papaya.
They had to find stuff that they could forage for in the jungle, or they had to catch fish in the water.
There's really not a whole hell of a lot to survive on. There were types of wild boar and bird and things like that, but we weren't allowed to kill anything because everything was protected.
Now there is a little bit of juice. The fact that they weren't allowed to hunt the animals on Borneo was never disclosed to me before. Sure, maybe it's come up, but I'd never heard it before, which means you likely haven't either.
Like, I just wanted to eat so bad.
I lost more than a pound a day. Most of those kids didn't have a pound to lose a day. People think when they watch the show that it looks hard. They have no idea. It's 10, 15, 20 times harder than you can imagine.
I don't know, Richard. I can imagine pretty hard. Anyway, as if starvation wasn't enough, they also had to endure some pretty intense weather conditions. And I don't know if many of y'all camp, but I assure you, storms are way more intense when you're outdoors. Now times that by 10 or 15 for the case of Borneo.
Nature is in charge. They would have these lightning storms that were just epic. The rain was really quite something. It was torrential. There was one storm, and we thought we were going to lose the set.
Boom! Like thunder and lightning, and the lights shorted out.
People screaming, and huge trees fell near us, like crashing over other trees, and we could have been standing there.
Remember, in those days, the crew or producers weren't allowed to step in and help the contestants unless they were hurt or sick. Not to mention how hard it would be to shoot a show in those conditions.
It all has a huge impact on production.
This is Command Central. Oh, and the power just went down. Every time we come in here, something happens, something odd happens.
The cameras would fog up because of the humidity.
They had this idea of infrared cameras that were going to work and everything. None of that worked. They ended up shooting a lot of the nighttime stuff just on basic little video cameras that you would get from Best Buy.
The sound guys were made crazy with the sound of the insects because they were so deafening.
I saw a dude fall 24 feet off a cliff. We were in the jungle. He was running backwards with a camera trying to film us. Dude fell off a cliff. He was fine, but I mean, people busted.
And that's pretty wild, but I'm not gonna lie. I was expecting more juice than we're getting right now. I'm super interested in all this background and insider info, but I promised y'all juice, and juice is exactly what I'm gonna get ya. Let's cut to that.
It's time for you to go.
But you're not going to win Survivor by winning out on the challenges. It's going to be a conniving, shitty win.
Through round after cutthroat round, one player starts to emerge as the most calculating of them all.
But I think until the next segment, the three of us can work together really well.
I trust you completely.
Yeah, I think we can trust the three of our votes.
Richard came to the island and had game face on from day one.
I think I'm in control of who's being voted off. And I think that's all that matters to me.
Rich, I mean, this guy he's strong. He's smart. The guy surprises me. You know, he's fat, but he's good.
Richard was, the puppet master, and he was really good at it.
You're the only one I've been able to trust from the beginning.
And you can right to the end.
Right.
Rich was just a Machiavellian person that was doing what he had to do to win.
They're not voting me off because I'm not letting them.
I felt not just one step ahead, but 10, 20, and that's the game.
Whatever it takes to win here is the point. It's a game, and call it Machiavellian, sure.
I knew that those people who were in my alliance had to be gotten rid of at some point.
But Richard's social strategies took many forms, and some of his psychological tactics were more physical than others.
One of the craziest points for me was this decision to spend more and more time naked.
He walks around naked quite a bit. I think it probably bugs some of the guys.
We would be sitting down, eating our bowl of rice. Rich would come, sit down with his legs spread. Hey guys, how you guys doing? And the girls would be like, can you just cover your legs, please? Cross your legs or something? He was doing it for a reason, to get under your skin.
But more than that, it was game.
Is it shock value? I don't know if it's shock value or not.
It was strategic.
Richard Hatch is a legend. At one point, I remember seeing dude bite a literal shark because it bit him. Now, that's on another season, so I don't have proof, but you'll have to take my word for it, right? After all, we're not on Borneo, competing for $1 million in the year 2000 money, no less. And you'd think that stakes like that alone would be compelling enough TV. But apparently, Mark Burnett disagreed.
It was strategic.
As the competition continues, Mark Burnett must craft a compelling story out of hundreds of hours of footage. But as he burns through his multi-million-dollar budget, rumor has it there's a problem.
They were doing somewhat rough edits on the other side of the island, and they deliver the first episode to Mark, and he thinks it's shit. So Mark recut the whole first episode. Usually you would not have an executive producer doing the editing. He was responsible for the vision, he was responsible for the execution. If this would have fallen apart, his career would have been done. He had to try to save this thing. And that's when he kind of started putting his fingers on the button.
I promised you juice, and here there be juice.
Cast members allege Burnett stokes up the tribalism, so it burns even hotter.
This is a television show. You do have to add a lot of drama.
Certain statements can be leading. What do you think about this person? Or they did that, huh? That's kind of interesting.
I didn't trust production because I felt like if I told them something, it would somehow leak out to people in my tribe or even the other tribe.
There's coercion. You're putting your thumb on the scale here and there, wherever it needs to be.
Now I want to be clear here. I think that this stuff faded out over the years. They found what made their show great, and I personally don't think it requires too much manipulation on the part of the producers beyond that. This isn't me trying to expose corruption on the show or whatever. As I've stated many times over, I love Survivor. And moreover, I'm just here for the juice, bruv. Now, time for a spoiler alert, because I'm about to reveal who won this show that aired in 2000. Spoiler alert. Okay, now that the nerds have gone, let's see who won this thing.
For the snake to eat the rat.
I thought for sure I was gonna win, despite Sue's venom.
I am choosing Kelly.
I was pretty darn sure I had at least 4 other votes.
But I'm voting for Rich.
The votes were being turned over, and it became 3-3.
We had an alliance to the end, and I'm fulfilling my obligation.
It was 3-3.
I remember looking out at production and people were holding hands and, you know, everyone's on the edge of their seats.
The winner of the first Survivor competition is Rich.
When they said Rich's name instead of mine, I was devastated.
I could never communicate to anyone the full entire body kind of release. It really happened.
That's pretty much the story of season 1 as it was being filmed, but this video ain't over yet. Now, I'm not sure, but I think, just think, that I can smell juice on the horizon. Especially because when it aired, Survivor was an astronomical hit. 15 million people watched live as episode 1 aired, and 57 million people tuned in to watch the finale. Afterwards, they were all huge stars. But, due to the way that some of the contestants were portrayed on the show, there was quite a bit of public backlash. Jervis drew personal umbrage with the way he was shown, as he was the only black person on the show that season, and he couldn't swim, and was, according to the public, too lazy to work. Ugh. At the time, these were some of the stereotypes attributed to black people. Again, this is back in the year 2000.
We were all kind of flailing. I'm not proud at all about how I did.
I haven't done a thing out here since I've been here, it seems like. And that's cool. I was dubbed the lazy guy. I'm fitting every negative stereotype about a black man there is right now. And it doesn't look good. I have yet to cook anything. I didn't see that until they actually showed it on TV.
But that's not all. In 2000, the greater public also wasn't a huge fan of gay people. See, this was before gay marriage was legal and before words like F-A-G were taboo. Unless, of course, you're in the Legion of Skanks or live in Austin, Texas.
The backlash then takes a disturbing turn when it starts to target Richard's sexuality.
Richard was gay. I mean, that was kind of a big deal in 2000 to talk about that on national television.
Me and Richard got to be pretty good friends. Not in a homosexual way, that's for sure.
You're talking about what it's like to be gay. You're having that point of view going up against, someone like Rudy, who comes from the military and very conservative.
I hadn't really understood, call me naive, which doesn't really fit my branding, but it's true, how I might be perceived and how that perception of that many American viewers might influence my life negatively.
Make sure you get this on TV.
Oh boy, you better have a beer in your hand when you're doing this one, Rudy.
I don't know what my buddies are going to say when I get home, but I'll have to deal with that.
Back then, gay people were second-class citizens. Still, today, challenging situation to be homosexual, but nothing like it was then. The press would write things like evil queen. The hatred, the venom, the fag, the queer, that was all completely and utterly shocking.
Truly disgusting. Yeah, I'm all for making jokes, but that's not what we're talking about here. This was hatred. And although I'm all about LOL hate, I am truly put off by hearing that. It makes me ashamed of my own countrymen. But on a lighter note, one of the contestants actually sued CBS for the way she was taken off the show.
But when the spotlight then shifts to the show itself, the controversy hits a whole new level.
Mark Burnett manipulated my exit from the show. Mark should have to answer for his actions, violating the very rules he set up for the game show. This is not about money.
I thought it was a done deal that Rudy would be the next one off, but it could be me. I don't know.
In February 2001, Season 1 castaway Stacey Stillman goes public with a lawsuit, claiming Mark Burnett denied her a fair chance of winning the $1 million prize.
Stacey, the weather has spoken, and the tribe has spoken.
Okay.
It's time for you to go.
This is Stacey Stillman. If you are a CBS affiliate or in any way affiliated with CBS, I will not be able to return your call as you are a party to this lawsuit. Thank you.
Stacey Stillman alleged that Mark Burnett suggested to other players that they vote her off and keep Rudy around because he would make better television.
Mark Burnett puts on contests for money. After that, he cuts it together to make it dramatic. In this case, the problem is he interjected himself into the game to add to the drama while the game was being played.
I stand by my claims, and the witnesses are ready to testify.
What's interesting about Stacey Stillman's claims is that they're actually backed up by another cast member, Dirk, who in a deposition said that Mark Burnett did come up to him and suggest maybe vote off Stacey, maybe keep Rudy around.
Dirk came to me and gave me this information. I in no way sought it at all. And numerous times he said to me, I regret voting against you. Mark Burnett came up to me and told me that the future contests would be more physical in nature, and specifically said, why don't you think of forming an alliance to get rid of Stacey and keep, say, Rudy, who'd be more helpful in the challenges.
Dirk was a big part of Stacey's case, and I've been asked about that a lot of times. What do you think about what Dirk said? I said, I know Dirk's an honest person. That's all I can say.
Burnett countersues Stillman for defamation, and her lawsuit is eventually settled out of court for an undisclosed amount.
Nothing was allowed to be staged. Every contest was won fair and square, and there was no retakes or setups to have people say things we wanted them to say.
We were not allowed to impact a contestant's game. Never did anything to sway a contestant one way or the other.
We have not learned what happened from it. As so many things in Hollywood do, it kind of disappeared and went away?
Oh, I think the show and CBS probably settled with Stacey because they didn't want to take the chance of there being more depositions and more public controversy about what did and didn't happen behind.
Was Stacey on to something? Was she just a sore loser? Let me know what you think in the comments. But listen up, because this is where it gets the very juiciest. Richard, who won the show, was charged with tax evasion in the year 2005. He ended up doing multiple years in prison because of this, which was wild enough. But check this out.
The IRS claimed I owed $300,000 that I attempted to evade paying. None of that's true. I didn't owe that much money, and I never attempted to evade it.
Among several defenses Richard offers up in court, one comes right out of a Survivor playbook, implicating the show's creator in a conspiracy.
When I caught them cheating, there's a line for me that was crossed. I was laying by the fire, and the producer handed food to Kelly, and I watched it happen.
He threw a power bar on the ground, like right at my feet, and Richard saw it.
I think it was a power bar, but if you're talking about that calorie deficit, that's enough to make you really, kick some ass.
So then Richard raises up a big stink to, Mark Burnett and the other producers, and then, then he starts claiming that, people are leaving me food everywhere.
And I explained to him that I caught producers cheating and that she'd been eating, etc. It's all a bullshit game.
And supposedly, at this point, is when Mark said to Richard, hey, if you hold this shit together and you end up winning this thing, I'll pay your taxes.
That's crazy. And as big a fan of the show as I am, I had no idea that this was what was alleged to go down.
What is your position, sir? Well, you'll learn that at the hearing on January 10th.
Reality TV's most notorious villain, Richard Hatch, is fighting to beat tax evasion charges by claiming that Survivor creator Mark Burnett promised to pay the taxes on his winnings.
Do I believe that Mark did that? 100%, because I would have done the same thing. I would have done whatever I got to do so that this whole shit doesn't fall apart.
Trouble is, Hatch has no evidence to back his claim, and many of the others just don't buy it.
It says in our contract, you're responsible for your taxes. I don't think there was a deal. I think he was just trying to get out of paying his taxes. Am I shocked? No, not at all. That's who he is.
Fair enough, but let's consider the source here. This is Kelly, who lost the $1 million to Richard by a single vote. Moreover, the fact that the show made it clear that they were responsible for their own taxes is why an offer like that from Mark to Richard would be so lucrative. It's a big enough offer that it would stop Richard from making a bigger stink about the whole thing. Kelly herself admitted to cheating and said herself that a producer dropped a power bar at her feet, as well as the fact that Richard saw it go down. She admitted all of that.
He threw a power bar on the ground, like right at my feet.
So if Richard wasn't promised something huge, why would he just let this die? Why wouldn't he have made a way bigger stink about it than he did? As was stated earlier in the video, Mark Burnett needed to make this show work or his career would be over before it started. Also, Richard is a very put-together person who tends to think a few steps ahead. He showed that during his season on Survivor. So why would he just figure that he could get away with being the most famous reality star in the world at the time and still get away with public tax evasion? Everyone knew he won that money. Now, I love the show, and I would hate for this to be true. But if we're tracking motivations here, it doesn't make any sense. At least, not with the information we've been given. At least, not to this critic.
maximum of 13 years behind bars.
You are one of the biggest stars in the world right now, and you're going to jail for 5 years for not paying taxes on some money that the world saw you win.
But you know, Kelly could have been called for a deposition, right? Like, the courts could have sent her a letter, yes, we used snail mail in those days, and asked her to come corroborate the cheating scandal, right? Surely Kelly isn't so petty that she'd let a man falsely sit in prison for 5 years, right?
Karma's a bitch. There you go, buddy. It couldn't have been more poetic justice than that. I mean, really.
Ugh. What a literal monster, inside and out. You admitted to taking the food. You admitted to cheating. You're a bad person for letting your penchant for being a sore loser drive you to that level of depravity. From the first time I saw you on TV, all the way until the moment I saw this, I was a fan of yours. Kelly, you were the one who coined the phrase, "I didn't come here to make friends," which is used all the time in reality TV nowadays. Richard might have lied, manipulated, and stabbed people in the proverbial back, and sure, that makes him a reality TV villain. But you, Kelly Wigglesworth, you're a bad person. But you're right about one thing. Karma can indeed be a bitch. But I'm sure that I don't have to tell you that, as karma's weapon in this case seems to be the wheel of time and the entropy that accompanies it. There's not enough plastic in the world for you to fix that. You know what? I'm going to stop my rant right here for the sake of being nice. But this will not be the last time I seek you out to make you the subject of my verbal ire, Kelly. Anyway.
And of course, that's what we saw also on Survivor.
More than 20 years after Richard's conniving win on the island, it's like he never left. As for Survivor, it's still going strong over 45 seasons later. And Mark Burnett is now viewed as the godfather of reality TV.
Given all I've heard, I imagine that's the case. After all, he allegedly made Richard an offer he couldn't refuse. Mark went on to do many other shows, including one that featured a man who would someday go on to become the President of the United States 2 times.
Mark Burnett turned it into the greatest reality show in the history of television. And it put him on the fast track in Hollywood. He was just cranking out shows left and right.
Burnett follows up CBS's Survivor with NBC's The Apprentice, in which he created an altogether different kind of villain who would capitalize on his reality TV persona in ways that no one could imagine.
Trump would win Survivor.
This has been a very telling, very dark morning of realization for me as I type up this script. I'm torn because I truly love Survivor. But, truth be told, this has darkened my perception of the showrunners themselves and the origin of the show itself. Again, I don't think this stuff still happens. I think after the first season, Mark had enough momentum that he wouldn't be put in such a desperate position. If there was cheating going on, then he'd likely nip it right in the bud. But desperation makes people do ugly things. And given the data we've collected here today, I am, at best, dubious about the way the first season went down. What do you think? Did Richard Hatch boldly believe he could publicly defraud the IRS? Or did Mark Burnett cover his ass with false promises in a moment of desperate weakness? Was Kelly's heinous refusal to testify on Richard's behalf justified? Do you think that this kind of thing still goes on? Or have years of cranking out 2 seasons of sensational TV a year allowed Survivor to course correct? Let me know what you think down below. Also, if you feel so inclined, remember to subscribe and to like the video, as it actually is a huge help for me. Anyway, I have been Critical Leaks, and in the meantime, be nice.